And welcome to episode 6. So today we're going to be looking at how to control the player movement. At the moment we can control it fine, but we're looking at improving that, having more control over it. Enjoy! Hi, I'm Chris Gilpin. Welcome to episode 6. So let's have a look at where we've got so far. So if I load this up, drag it across, then I can use my keyboard and I can move the guy around, which sounds really good. There are two problems with that. At the moment, I can sort of go anywhere, which I don't really want. I want a little bit more control over that. And also I can go into the sea. Well, I'm going to deal with the whole sea thing in the next video, hopefully, episode 7, if I can count. And I'm going to deal with the movement now. So I don't really want the character, which at the moment is represented by some weird diamond shape. I don't really want them to be able to just go anywhere. I want them to either be at this tile or this tile. Okay, which means I'm going to have to create a sort of movement engine, which will be exciting. So that's what we're doing first. So let's get started. Now, at the moment, this is controlled by the movement tab here, the 8 directions. I'm controversially going to get rid of that, and I'm going to leave it static. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to be doing. I'm going to move it somewhere slightly in the correct position to be in a tile. Then maybe we can refine that. So at the moment it's not quite in the tile. So I can move that slightly. Okay, and I could do this mathematically, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to do a trial and error. Okay, that's roughly right. Maybe up a little bit. And I'm just using the cursor keys on the keyboard, so if you click on it and then use the cursor keys, you can move it, and it can move a pixel at a time, so it means you can get it absolutely perfect rather than dragging it. That looks about right, maybe right a little bit. And I could be doing this for hours. Okay, that looks good enough for now. Okay, so I'm going to do everything from the event editor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on there, right click on new condition, and I'm going to say upon pressing a key, okay, which I'm going to do the right hand key. Now what I want to do is when the player presses the right hand key, I want this to move across a tile. Okay, so let's have a look and see how big the tiles are. I think 64, is it? Yeah, 64. So I want my player to move across 64 pixels. So I go to position, and I'm going to set the X coordinate because I don't need them to move up and down, I need them to move right. Okay, drag this across. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to add 64 onto it. Now it doesn't like that because it's saying, well, add 64 onto what? Well, I'm going to add 64 onto their current X position. Their current X coordinate. So I'm going to pick up their X coordinate, then add 64 to it. Okay, let's have a look at that, see how that works. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press the right hand button and see what happens. And there we go. Perfect. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, that's not perfect. There's no animation, there's nothing clever about that. Well, let's worry about that next. So at the moment we've got no clever animations for it, so we want to try and deal with that. Okay, now we've sort of talked about this in previous videos, but if you haven't watched the previous videos, I'm going to remind you for this tutorial that each active, in fact actually not just actives, most objects, not all, and actually there's some objects I wish did have these, most objects including actives have things called alterable values. Now that means you can assign a value to just this one. Okay, obviously if you duplicate it, then it assigns it to all of those because those are exact copies, but we won't go into that just yet. So if I add new and I click here, and what am I going to say? Counter X, and I'm renaming these so when I go to the event editor I know which one's which. I'm going to rename these desired X. Okay. So, I don't like the word counter. Let's do offset. I don't know. I spent ages thinking up names. You're probably thinking, what the heck are you doing? Okay, let's explain. So what I want to do is when I press right, I want to have the desired X to what I've just done there. So that plus 64. But I don't want to get there straight away. So I want some sort of counter to say, well, it's not quite there yet. Maybe I should say old X. Let's do it that way. See, this is all done live. There we go. So the old X is where it is now, and the desired X is where I want it to be. Now notice I'm not saying old right, desired right, okay? I'm just talking about X, because when I do left, I can use this same system. It will make sense. So let's go to Event Editor, and instead of setting the X position to that, I'm going to copy that and get rid of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the alterable value, so desired X, to that. I'm going to also change the alterable value for old X. And I'm just going to paste it in, but I'm just going to put the X active. And actually I probably want to do that the other way around, so I'm going to double click on it and say, right, do that first. Okay. Now, nothing's happened. It's all happened behind the scenes. We don't see anything. So what we want is a condition here. Okay, and I'm going to compare two general values. So compare, where is it? Compare two general values, there we are. And I'm going to say any time that the alterable value for old X is different, so not equal, to the alterable value for the new X. So any time where the current position of the active is not the same as the current, as the desired position of the active, I'm going to do something. So I want to know whether it's left or right. So if I say, there's loads of different ways of doing this. If the old X take away the desired X is greater to 0. So when I do the old X, which is on the left hand side, and I take away the new X, which is on the right hand side, so I do this the other way around. It's probably easier if I do it the other way around, because then it's easier to explain. So if the character's on the left hand side, so a small value, and I want him to be on the right hand side, so a bigger value, if I take the bigger value away from the smaller value, I'll get a number that's bigger than 0. Okay, and I'm going to copy that. Am I going to go now? Okay, so that means we're going to go right. So I want to right click on this, and I want to right click on this, and I want to insert a comment above this, going right. Okay, comments have nothing to do with your code, they're just so when you look back later on you know what the heck you were doing, okay? So this one's going right. Oh, and I'm going to do one more, insert, and I'm going to say every, and I'm going to say every 10 milliseconds. So every 10 milliseconds, and I'm going to get that active, position, set X coordinate, then I'm going to do, what am I going to do, position, X coordinate, so where that person is, then I'm going to add 1. Okay, but that will always happen, it will just keep going right. If I click run, I'll show you. So if I click right, it's just going to keep going right, and it's not going to stop, because the old X isn't being updated. Okay, so I need to update the old X. Triple value set, old X, I need to be set to the new position each time. Okay, so let's run that now. It looks pretty slow. So if I click right, there we go. Okay, now that's really slow, so what I could do is do it quicker, so every 5 milliseconds, or instead of just adding 1 on, I could add 5 on. So I'm going to do both and see whether that makes a difference. So I'm going to click right. That's pretty fast. Probably want to add a little bit more on. So I'll add 10 on. Problem is it gets really choppy when you do this. Yeah, that looks a bit choppy. So I'm going to go back to adding 5 pixels on each time. But I'm going to make it slightly less. I'm going to make it every 3 milliseconds. And it's a balance between, the problem is that doing something every, the smaller this is, you can get into problems. However, let's try it. Okay. That's too quick, so if I do less pixels, let's do it 2 each time. That's pretty smooth, isn't it? Okay, so let's move this under the comment. So all that's about going right. I'm going to highlight those. So what I did is click on 7, hold shift down, and then click on the bottom one. I'm going to press Control and C, then I'm going to click on the 10 here, press Control and V. So that copies those 3 things again. Now how do I edit this? There we are. So going left now. Oh, I always press return, you have to click OK on that. This time I'm going to press the left cursor key, and this time I don't want it to add 64, I want it to take away 64. Okay. This time it will be lower than 0. Okay. Looks good. Let's have a look. Let's run the application. I'm going right. Oh dear. So what's happened is it's added 2, which I don't want it to take away 2. Clearly. That's probably the first mistake I've made so far. That's not bad. I'll say that. Right. Now what you want to make sure is you always add the same amount. So now there's a mistake there. Okay. Now if you have a look, if I click right and then left, it brings me right back to the tile. It's brilliant. But if I click right and then left straight away, what it's doing is it's doing this, adding the 64 bit, but then halfway through it's done that, it's going to take away 64 from the value. We want this character to stay on a tile, okay? So we're not quite there yet with this. What we want to make sure that we do is have it so that you can't, it just ignores it if it's mid-flow, okay? So I'm going to click and drag this into there. I'm going to double click on it and say only fire this if they're equal, if it's actually finished an action. I'm going to click and drag this into this one as well. So let's try that again. Okay, and let's move this across. So I'm going to do right and then left. It just ignores me because it's still doing the right, so it doesn't then go back and do left. So however much I play with this, it won't ever go out of sync with the tile. Okay, so you want the character animation, the walking animation, to finish, and then you can control the next bit. Okay, now this should be relatively easy to do for up and down. So I'm going to copy this again, the same method. Click on there, press Ctrl and V, and I thought you could. You can double click it. So this time I'm going up. See, every time, right? Going up. So going up. Now at the moment we've only got the X, so I need to go back, and I'm going to name some Y's. So I'm going to keep the same format, old Y, then desired Y. Now you might be thinking, why am I not leaving any spaces there? Well, I do normally when I name things, I do camel case, which is the first word is lowercase, then every other word is uppercase. In a lot of programming languages you can't leave spaces. I would argue not to leave spaces in Clickteam Fusion, even though it does allow you to. It just makes things a lot easier when you name them with camel case. So that's without spaces, and you show capital letters to show the different words. So this time I'm going to just get rid of, no, I'm going to leave that in at the second, so I'm going to ignore that. However, we want to set old Y, and I'm just going to actually change that to Y, to the Y position of the active. And I want to change the desired Y to the Y. Now, you might think that this makes sense here, and this is something that's really important about Clickteam. The 0 for the Y is not at the bottom. Now, the reason that a lot of people think it's at the bottom, including me sometimes, is that you think about it, in maths at school, all graphs, the Y's started at the bottom and worked upwards, okay? On computer programming, most languages, and not all of them, which is helpful, but most computer languages start with 0 at the top. Okay, if you think about a web page, it makes sense to start at the top as 0, because then you're scrolling down, okay? So 0 at the bottom of the page doesn't make any sense at all. 0 at the top does. Clickteam's no different. 0 will be at the top, not the bottom. So when we're moving something up, we're moving it towards the 0. So we're taking something away from it, not adding to it, okay? That can get you so easily. So I'm going to take away 64 from it, because we want it to move up, okay? Now this one I do want to change. Okay, so it's old Y. It's different to desired Y. And then desired Y, take away old Y, is lower when we're going up. And set X coordinate, we don't want that. So I'm going to copy that. And position set Y coordinate, I'm just going to paste it in, and I'm just going to change the Y. And we're taking away 2. So I'm going to delete the other one. And then edit. Old Y. So I'm just changing all of these, just going through changing them all. I'm just going to move that back up so I know that they have the same orders. Okay, I'm not quite sure whether that will work, so let's give it a go. Okay, so when I move up, I should go up. There we are, perfect. I can't go down, so let's do down now. Okay, so I'm going to copy all of that. This time I'm going down. Not press enter. You have to click OK. Okay, so down arrow. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. Except for the fact I'm adding 64. This is going to be greater than 0. And this is going to be adding 2, because down is a plus. Okay, let's run that and see if that works. Let's move that across so you can see it. Okay, drop the keyboard. So down, 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 up, right, left, and right left doesn't conflict at all, but up and down do. So I can get between the tiles, so let's sort that out next. Okay, I don't need to close anything down. Okay, so it's this one here, we need it to be equal to. So equal. Okay, this isn't actually complete yet, which is frustrating because we're almost there. Up and down don't conflict with each other. Okay, so it doesn't matter how many times I play around with it, I won't get the little player icon between tiles. It will just be exactly where I want it to be. Left and right doesn't do it. Okay, but if I go left and then up, or right and then down, there we are. It does do it. It does some weird diagonal move, which is not great. Okay, unless we want that in our game. I don't want diagonal moves, I want either up, down, left, right. I'm quite boring like that. It's a lot easier to do what we're doing later on if it's just in the 4 dimensions, or the 4 directions I should say. So let's close that down, and here I've got them looking at the X. As long as the X isn't moving, and as long as the Y is not moving, then you can press the up arrow. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to drag this Y to here. I'm going to drag this Y also to here. So it checks to see if there's any movement at all. And only if there's no movement, then I can press the right hand arrow. Now I could do a different condition. I could put all these together, but I think it's a lot easier to follow having them there, and it's not an awful lot more code. So if I run that now, and let's just run it here, so I can press down, down, oh, down, right, up, left, and I can keep pressing them, and it won't muck about with it. So that's looking pretty good. That works nicely. Now I might think, well, hang on, this movement's not very good. I want to change the movement later on. I want him to, the player, whatever the player is, I want them to be able to run faster. Well, we're going to be looking at that later when we look at extending this slightly, where you can save the 2. Remember we used 2, but you could have that as a value, an alterable value attached somewhere in the game, and then you just have to change it once and it'll update all the others. And most of the coding should be built like that, because if I suddenly decide that I want the player to move faster, I've got no way of doing that. Okay, so that's the next step. However, there is one thing I want to do before we finish. I'm just going to show you actually. If I press down, there's nothing happening. Okay, the player's not moving. It only happens once. Okay, so I want to try and sort that out. That's the last thing I want to do. I'm rambling. Right, so here it says upon pressing right. That's once. But if I replace it, keyboard, repeat while key is pressed, right, if it picks it up, there we go. And if I drag this across to the others, so left for that one, my keyboard's doing that funny thing where it's not picking up everything I do straight away, there we go. And if I run it now, and I have no idea whether this will work, I hope it does. So if I keep down held, perfect. And I can move the guy around and he'll stay, or she will stay, or it will stay exactly on the tiles. And yet they probably don't know it's happening. Okay, if you do it quick enough, and I think this is a bit slow, but if you do it quick enough, they don't even notice the fact they can't be between tiles. But this is quite a common feature to an awful lot of RPGs. When we, as I said before, when we look at collision detection later on, which we're going to have to sort out ourselves, because the collision detection in Clickteam Fusion is amazing, it really is fantastic. However, for these types of games, it's not useful to look at 2 things hitting each other. What you want to do on this is when you click left, you want the player not to be able to go left at all, not wait for that little diamond to hit the blue tile. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that later on, hopefully in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click like. If you really enjoyed it, please click subscribe. Thank you very much.